My name is Chevy Morgan. I am the host, the producer of Chevy the Entertainer. It's a YouTube show, that's what you're watching. So, I wanted to start this by saying I want to severely apologize from the bottom of my heart for yesterday because I lied to you. Circumstances beneath my control disabled my ability to upload a podcast yesterday. I mentioned in episode 2 of CTE, Chevy the Entertainer, that I would be uploading one podcast a day, for myself and for you. It's a form of therapy for me, and it's a form of entertainment to you. What happened is yesterday my friend came over to help work on my car to go get a battery for it, and take my battery, which I charged, and fixed it up. Didn't work out, but as I left, I was in a hurry because his car arrived as I was in the process of filming, and I did not get rid of all the cables because I've got like lots of lights and laptop and microphone and camera charger, etc. And so I left all the cables there, and then my dog ran inside and dragged the cords, and my camera fell on the ground, and the cord, the USB that connects my Blackmagic 4K pocket camera to the computer, it was injured and decided not to work anymore. So I could not use the camera or upload just the 25 minutes I filmed last night. And it's a shame because we ended up having an incredibly in-depth conversation, my friend and I, and my partner. We were in a really good form, just flowing, just our vibrational frequencies were just bouncing off each other like a basketball game, and it was a bloody good conversation, and it's gone. It will never happen like that again. I mean, we meet again, my friend and I, unless one of us gets struck by lightning, but that point in time, it's just forever lost. And it makes you think about all those times you may have a colourful memory and you didn't document it. I mean, you don't want to be like an obsessive technological fiend that spends a whole life documenting everything. But if you know you've got something to say and you've got the inclination and the resources, why not record it and give back to society? Because there's no gift like the gift of giving. Everyone knows that. So don't be a selfish bitch. How good does my coffee look, by the way? My mocha. Single origin coffee beans, freshly purchased from the cafe. Grounded. Espresso machine. 3 shots. And then I got this raw cacao magnesium powder that my partner bought me for Christmas. So I don't remember where I was up to yesterday. I know my points were marketing, war against men, differences in culture, Ukraine and Australia. So I guess I'll go to that point, number 3. I feel it's about right. So, differences in culture. I probably mentioned something yesterday. I probably should have watched a video from yesterday to see what I spoke, but I'm not that professional, so. But the main difference is work ethic. But then again, I read an article that Australians work more hours than any country in the world. And when you go to the train in Melbourne, it's always packed. People just look tired. It makes you think they're working a lot. So I don't really like that stereotype, like Tim Dillon says, that Australians are just lazy bitches, because that's just not fair. A lot of people here kill themselves with work. They even do it to the detriment because they don't know what else to do. They haven't got that many hobbies or like family that they really love, or they haven't got much art or culture they want to sink their teeth into. They haven't got motivations or dreams to learn another language or travel. And so they just bury themselves in work. Obviously, climate is a number one difference in culture as well. I read this book once that dictated that in a hot climate, people are more fertile and men are more aggressive to make up for that. There's even cultural differences between Perth and Melbourne, I've noticed. I've noticed when I was in the single dating market, which it wasn't very long, people in Perth preferred rougher guys, like, more muscular, tattoos, motorbikes, and quite violent. Whereas in Melbourne they preferred men who are more classy, like slick back hair, businesses, tight pants, cafe lattes, sushi. It also comes down to the ethnic background. Like Melbourne is mainly settled by Greek, Italian, Vietnamese, Sudanese, whereas Perth was more British, Irish, Malaysian, Singaporean, South African. And that's going to derive a lot of cultural differences. But I mean, most people I know from Ukraine, which is an ex-Soviet country, they are very well educated. Like my fiance's mum, she has 3 degrees, one in directing, one in psychology, and teaching, because she's a school headmaster, second in charge of a Jewish school in Kharkiv. And it's very awe-inspiring to be around people who are so well educated, because I think it has something to do with also the economy, because Australia, it was an extremely powerful economy in the 1980s, the 70s, 60s, even into the 90s, where people could have a good life. They could go to the beach after work. They could read a book, and they don't have to work 60 hours a week in order to survive. I mean, I know many people who just relied on welfare and they still lived a high quality of life. They had many social gatherings, clothes on their back, food in their belly. They had a brand new phone, always. So why would you bust your gut and kill yourself with work if you can sit in the hay all day and play the flute? But also it comes down to pride, national pride. I mean, you should want to improve yourself and be a hard-working person, because it'll make your country a better place. And some national pride is a good thing, because you should want to improve where you live, because it makes sense to be in teams. Like on Australian soil, you want to improve the country, because if you work hard and ambitious, then let's say you open up a really cool restaurant, people get to go there, it's a meeting place, people get to fall in love there, they get to enjoy the mouth pleasure, the feeling of the different textures, and you're providing a place of meaning and purpose. Like work provides meaning and purpose. Like when you go to work as a chef, for example, as an apprenticeship, that will provide companionship and income, and they can feel tired at the end of the day. Particularly when you're very young, you're full of steam. Like I remember when I was 21, I was working full-time 12-hour night shifts and studying during the day, doing a bridging course to get into Murdoch. And I could do it. I mean, I was always tired, but I got through it. And like my little sister, she's amazing. She worked full-time in an administration job and some kind of real estate or something in Toorak in Victoria. And she also worked in a very snazzy nightclub, like one of those popular ones in Melbourne. And she earned quite a lot of money from there, some tips, and she's very gregarious, social, intellectual, and young. And she bought a house pre-21. Like, it's quite a good accomplishment. She didn't have any support financially from her parents or cousins or anything, or a boyfriend or anything. She never really had a boyfriend until she was 21. And so when I grow up, I want to be like her. She's an amazing person. Why did I mention that? Oh yeah, well because she busted a gut for a couple of years when she was young, and she was studying too. She got a degree in business at RMIT. It's incredible. So you can't generalize and say, oh, Russian-speaking countries much harder working than Australians, because there's individual differences. But as a general rule, I would say that Australians do work less. I mean, they have less education because economic differences mainly, that the welfare system here is quite generous. Well, obviously it's very tough to live on $500 a fortnight. But, a lot of people deal drugs or do cash work on the side and they get by. But it's something so different. Like, Katya, she's so different from any girl I've met. I mean, I've only had one other real relationship. I mean, I had a couple small ones, but I've only had 2 long-term relationships, and I never really rooted around because it was not my style. Like, I've always tried to avoid what the majority do, because I never liked Game of Thrones. I never really liked McDonald's. I never really liked chasing one-night stands. Just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. I mean, 1938, a lot of people started kicking out Jews from restaurants, from bars, weren't allowing them to own businesses because they were different. And also, Hitler, he knew that people needed an enemy. He sussed out the crowd, and he realized, Germans seem pretty upset about losing World War I, and they're trying to open up these little shops selling sausages or selling sandals, whatever. And they noticed that the Jews, who've got like a very strong work ethic, they're maybe making a little more money. And so even though Hitler, he had Jewish friends at the art school, he decided to say, okay, I guess we'll make Jews the enemy. And then it made it easier for Germans not to confront their own ways. I was discussing this actually yesterday with my friend on the way home from the failed car fixing attempt. How Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher from the 19th century, he had a very famous paper he wrote called "God is Dead and We Have Killed Him." And I analysed that to mean the lifestyle, the culture, customs, and general consensus of the German public is that we no longer need Jesus Christ and the words of the Bible as a guide for how to live their lives. And apparently, I'm pretty sure the Germans are pretty kinky. I know, like, the Beatles went to Germany in 1962, like Hamburg, and they partied a lot. Took a lot of pingers and tranquilizers, and had a lot of promiscuous sex. And they were the bad boys, leather jackets, screaming around. It's funny because the Rolling Stones are actually a lot more straight-edged. They weren't as big into partying and satanic worshipping as the Beatles were. But they had the image of being bad boys, whereas the Beatles were the real bad boys. They had the image of being straight-edged. It's all marketing, man. Marketing makes the world go round, makes the girls go down. Sorry, that was rude. But God is dead and we have killed him. Like, that's just basically saying, look, our lifestyle is pretty nihilistic now. What do we worship? Like, I was trying to look up before the journal article I found that neurologically, like, we have the hardware in our brains that we have figured out that we want to worship something. We want to have an overall moral compass to guide our actions and our beliefs. Now, you may say to yourself, I don't need any higher power, but everybody serves something. Everybody worships something. I had this argument with this lady online a few months ago. I only just started showing interest in Christianity, and she really enjoyed treating me like I'm a piece of rotten bile from some kind of yellow-green liquid that someone coughed up and just left to rot. That's how she treated me, but I can handle it. I'm a big boy. And she was saying, I asked her, what do you worship? What do you look up to? She kept just abusing me, but I was just being the bigger man. And I was saying, no, okay, so if you think that every single religion is just a piece of shit, may I ask, what do you worship? And she said, love. life, pleasure. And to me, I'm like, well, if you analyze what you're just saying, you worship love. That's comes down to physical intimacy and connection and your souls growing together. But that is something that the Bible recommends. And to worship love, that's rather odd, because to worship means that it has a higher power over you. But you should be in control of love. You should be the one who pulls the strings in love. Like, you call the shots. You don't want to have a man control you, or a woman, or whatever floats your boat. You know, a cat, even though I don't recommend that. To say you worship love, it seems rather empty, considering as well, I asked her if she was in a relationship, and she refused to answer it, which I assumed is no. Also because just her tone in the comments on Instagram, I felt like there was some deep residing issues there that wasn't just channeled directly at me and my thoughts. I felt like she had some personal pain, and she was venting onto me because I'm a white male and I can take it. I am the enemy. I am the Antichrist reborn. So she's like, oh, well, this is a perfect punching bag for me. But, sometimes you've got to let people vent. I can't take it. Like, I'm not going to cry myself to sleep, and maybe just a little tear, but not going to like profusely drown tears down at the response of her aggression. So be very careful to acknowledge that you worship something. I mean, it may be money, it may be sex, it may be power. But I think there were some pretty cool stories in the Bible, like Cain and Abel. I love that story. It's basically about these couple of brothers, they're farmers, and one of them gets jelly of the other guy because he's got the hottest girl in town. So the brother just acts on his impulse, because human beings, we're quite barbaric. There is animal instincts behind us. We have a lizard brain. We have a part of us that just wants to fucking fight and survive. And the prefrontal cortex, which is only a couple 100,000 years old, is what makes us human compared to apes or dogs. And that doesn't always have the control. And so I think that the Bible, it was written as a guide, because priests were the only ones who could read Latin. And so let's say if you lived in a community of 2,000 people, there may be only 2 people that can read. The rest were farmhands or butchers, bakers, candlestick makers. And so the priests would get together with people, and they would discuss some of the basic morals to live by, like thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's wife. Because you think about it, if everyone was obsessed with trying to root their neighbour's wife all the time, I mean, that would make me very upset, because I want my partner all to myself. Like, I'd be very upset to know if other men were having sex with her. That would bother me greatly, and I would seek revenge. So it's not a good thing, because I would like to think, when I have children with my fiancée, that I want to know that I'm the father. It means a lot to me, because I want my genes to go on. I think that I have something special about me, and I'd be disappointed if I don't let her leave my mark. And also, I think, my kids will be pretty cute with her, and I don't want someone else to come in and weasel their way in, because it's a waste of time. Like, but to raise someone else's child, I just feel like it goes against instincts. I mean, of course, it's a very nice thing for a man to marry a woman with a child from another man, but usually you see them have another child together with the new man. And I would do that. Like, if I wasn't with Kati, like I'm not saying I would refuse a woman with a child from another man, but I would like to have a child with her as well. Just because I'm just curious to see what my children would look like. I mean, am I a bad person for just wondering that? I just want to see, does it work? Does my package work? Am I fertile? I'm just curious, I'm a curious little button. I've kind of gone off topic here, but that's okay. Sorry, I probably left a really loud noise in on the mic. Must have been very annoying for you. But it feels very awkward to discuss the fact that I'm reading the Bible a little bit. Like I got given a copy from my friend in Maryborough in Victoria. I was living for a few months, trying to escape Melbourne. And this incredible man, he gave me a copy of this book of this beautiful lady. She was such a sweet soul. She actually passed away recently. She was incredible. I used to talk to her. She gives amazing eye contact, and she seems to have so much life in her. And she was cheeky, but she was so pure, and she put a heart on her sleeve, and it's a shame, because she had so much to offer, and it's such a shame to think how, I don't spend time with my grandmother. I know my grandma, she's quite sick. She's recently her partner's gone to palliative care in Perth, and her and my mum had issues that weren't that close in the past few years. Obviously we moved to eastern states, and she's stuck in WA in this crappy little rental property in Hammy Hill, and now because her partner, her new man, because my grandfather passed away over a couple of decades ago. I forget his name, but it's not relevant to you hear his name anyway. But she had so much to offer, wisdom. I think it's such a shame. All I do in my spare time is just consume films and books and go for walks, and I talk to. All I ever do is listen to podcasts. I don't really talk to human beings in real life, and it's a real shame because people have wisdom to offer. Particularly, this woman who passed away at the church I was going to, I just felt like I could talk to her all day. She had so much to offer, and I think there's a real agenda to keep people apart, to not encourage intergenerational contact, because there's wisdom to be found. I think I've said this the other day, but yeah, there's something beautiful about talking to different people, different age to you. But yeah, she gave a book to him, and he gave to me. He was a priest, a young priest with a family, a very kind man, but he was very virtue signaling with his COVID compliance. But no one's perfect. I've got my bucket full of flaws as well. For example, a friend of mine from old university, he was actually voted or assessed to be the highest grades at the time. He was incredible, a really gifted man. I've always respected him greatly. I really wish I was more like him. His discipline and the ability to control his urges and to focus himself on his studies to a point of he's damaged his health. I remember seeing him in exam season. He looked like he'd just come back from a gulag camp in Soviet Union where he was forced labor and eating nothing but carrots. He was intense. He was willing to damage his health temporarily for the greater good. And I asked him why, and he said he just wanted to see how far he could go. He would study to a point of personal pain, but he's inspired people by that. He inspired me. Not that I've grown to be a better man because of him, but maybe just 0.01% I've improved from my interaction with him. What was I talking about him for? Yeah, because he messaged me last night saying, where's the podcast? Because I said I was going to do one a day. And he's someone, because I just mentioned before, I'm not perfect. I made a grave personality flaw, character flaw with him, because when I first started doing blogging a few years ago, I was got a bit manic, and I made a post saying I'll give away a brand new unopened iPhone X to people, whoever uploads the best video, said how they're going to help the world in 5 minutes. And I had, guess how many entries I had? 1, uno, hana, il. itchy. I had one entry, and so it was this gentleman who I went to university with, and I probably should have just given him the phone, but I've never really been financially viable since I was in my early 20s, and I should have, because it has really torn me up inside, because he cut sick at me. He really told me where to go, and it was especially brutal from him because he's such a gentle soul. Like, normally he's a man who isn't really like a classic example of a high emotional repertoire. Like, I mean, maybe behind closed doors, but face to face, he was always very calm and collected. Whereas someone like myself, I put my heart on my sleeve. Like, I'm very proud of my emotional range. But, different strokes for different folks. If everyone was like me, like I messaged my sister a couple of weeks ago and said, the world would be a terrible place. I wouldn't be able to handle that. It would suck. Every personality type, there's about 20 different personality archetypes. There's about 20 different personality types in this world, and they all have their place in the community. Like I was saying the other day, we're supposed to live in communities of about 2,000-3,000 people. That's what Native American Indians used to do, and that seems to be the best. And so obviously you've got neurotics, you've got super ballers, people just like gun-ho, like warriors are just excited to go kill the other tribe. You've got the intellectual types who just want to count the grains. You've got the people, you've got the carers, the nurturers, you've got the lovers, you've got the entertainers, you've got the various other personality types. What's another personality type? The gluttonous type. They may have their place. Because a glutton, if someone's obsessed with shoveling resources into their mouth, like berries and beefcakes, they will not let their team down. They'll go out and hunt. They'll find some more food because they're addicted to food, right? So they'll have their place in the community too, because they want their snack. They're not going to let themselves feel that feeling of an empty stomach and have to confront their thoughts. Because when you actually had a friend at university did a study that the more you eat, the lower your cognitive abilities. So obviously a lot of people self-medicate with excessive food and drink. It's like a food coma. People laugh about that. Oh, I've got a food coma. Well, basically you're saying you're self-medicating. You're trying to escape from your consciousness because your thoughts are bothering you. Now, I've done that before. I think there's a bit of an agenda to encourage young men to be obsessed with bodybuilding, because I used to be way obsessed with it and eat like 10 meals a day, and I was quite fatigued all the time because I was a strict vegetarian. Like, only animal products I'd eat were eggs. I didn't even eat milk or drink milk, obviously. And it didn't seem to be beneficial. I mean, maybe I could defend myself. I could carry a big rock a long way. I look good in a t-shirt. And also it helped attract my partner I'm with now, because I was very fit when I first met her. And it's some discipline. I mean, obviously I'm not saying everyone should work out. Well, I am saying that, but not be obsessed with it, like 6 days a week, an hour and a half of crunching weights. But it showed her, like, I did that myself. You can't replicate that. No one can lift those weights for you. And maybe some people can take steroids and that gives them extra boost, or they take pre-workout. But then there's side effects of that. Like, I know people that take pre-workout, they're usually really cranky. They have mood swings because they're taking very powerful stimulants. And steroids, it makes your neck really thick and you look a bit strange. And also it affects your testicles. And if women take steroids, they get these really ripped abs and it looks a bit odd. It just looks like artificial. And there's a Fibonacci sequence. Like human beings, when something is chemically enhanced, it just doesn't look right. It's just, to the trained eye, if you really take a deep breath, settle down and analyze the situation, you'd realize when a girl has abs that are just like so ripped, like like chiseled like a Greek god, it just looks a bit odd because it's chemically enhanced. It's anabolic steroids. It's not that pretty. I mean, it comes down to what's that expression? The hero's journey. Like the themes of almost every single film and book in history has the hero's journey. And some people want to do that in an easy, controlled method of their own home. They can just inject this liquid into their butt and do some crunches and be like, take some photos of their stomach and be like, look at me, mummy. Look at me, daddy. I'm a success. I've got ripped abs. Love me. Love me, daddy. Look at my abs. Whereas, to do other things like to learn a new language, travel the world, study religions, raise a beautiful family, have connections to the community, get involved with politics after researching it, developing your spiritual connection to higher being, getting out there and seeing all the beautiful nature, that takes a lot of work, whereas to just take some sexy selfies of your ripped body, that seems a little bit simpler. I mean, obviously it's incredibly hard to be devoted to an intensive gym workout, but it's unitary. You're just focusing on one facet. If you just turn your brain off and just lift metal, eat lots of tofu, and refrain from drinking too much, yes, it's tough, but there's definitely tougher things out there. So, go back to my point that I was supposed to be discussing, differences in cultures. Well, Katia, my partner, her mum's last name is a Jewish name, it's Weinberg, right? And her father was like fully Jewish, and so has roots from Israel. It's a holy land. It's a very special place, and so I know there's some Jewish customs like they encourage family and they have like one glass of wine on Sundays and they don't work on Sabbath on Saturdays. So they have a day off, so which means that the other 6 days they really encourage hard work. And that may be hard to do because let's say if you're born into a family who are millionaires, a child or teenager may think, what's the point of me busting my gut to a job when I've already got enough to retire on? Like I've got food, shelter, transport, and clothing and entertainment covered financially for unless the economy collapses or your bank shuts down for the rest of their life. But you have to have purpose and meaning, and you don't have to just do a regular job that just gives you a week-to-week paycheck. You can get involved in so much. I mean, I walked past Bay Street in Port Melbourne and had a chat with one of my clients about a year ago. I miss my clients, actually. I miss my job. But, they're really colourful because some people with disabilities or mental health issues, because they've been ridiculed a lot because they may look a bit different or they speak a bit differently, they haven't got much to lose. So they're quite authentic. I'm not trying to fetishize people with mental health issues, which has obviously been done in society already. I mean, because, a lot of people find meaning in their identity and they kind of glorify abuse because it gives them excuse for lack of ambition, lack of attempt to try anything in life. But I went past these Red Cross, one of these, or Salvo's stores, and there's a woman outside having a cigarette, probably about 55, calm, collected, kind of short, like blonde hair, quite tanned, but, just cool, calm, collected lady. And my client, she came up to her and said hello, and I suggested to my client, why don't you ask for a volunteering job? Because I know she wanted to get involved in the community. And my client just really gutsy went up and had a chat. And the woman's like, yeah, maybe I get you a job with me working out back. We can fold clothes together. And I was talking to that lady, and she said she's got many houses in the area, a couple of houses in Port Melbourne. So she's obviously up to her, she's obviously fully made. Like she's obviously cashed up to the yards because Port Melbourne, like if you bought a house there, anywhere in Melbourne 20 years ago, it would have gone up in value twice as much. So you can get a second mortgage on that. So say you bought the house for 300 grand in 2000. I mean, that would be worth like 1.5 million now. And so, hello. But she still kept busy. She wanted to have community engagement. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, props to her. Like, she's what society should be like. I love her, the idea of her, the fact that she could just sit on a beach, drink cocktails, pay a masseuse to touch her feet. But no, she chose to continue to keep busy. I mean, I know a lot of farmers, when they stop working, they die. And I'm not trying to say work is everything, but just to keep active, not just be in a constant state of hedonistic lifestyle, just constantly just cake, and it's not meaningful, and your body will break down quicker. Like your body knows if you have meaning. Like, you'll stay alive if you have meaning. I really feel like it's incredibly important to have some kind of higher purpose, whether it be looking after your grandchildren or making a podcast, writing books, or just really enjoying cycling. But something, just knowing that when you burst out of bed in the morning, that you've got something that I've got this to look forward to. Oh yeah, I've got connections, I've got networks, I've got people I'm excited to hear their stories. Oh, how did Sharon go with her date last night? Oh, how's Neil going with his dog? He's broke his leg. Is it getting better? You've got to be, your subconscious wants to have those things to think about. If you haven't got any engagement, you start to create problems in your own life just to fix them. You'll start to just yell at your husband for no reason, just to see him fight back, just to see a reaction out of him, just because he's so cute when you're angry. So, as I discussed this the other day, but there is a big problem I've noticed with retired Australians. They look a bit glum because they haven't got any higher meaning, but I don't blame them because that's what they're encouraged to do. I mean, it's a survival technique to follow the status quo, to do as the others do. If you think differently from the majority, you're more likely to stand out and get taken out in times of crisis. So, but then you got to be really careful not to be in danger of being like a Melbourne hipster. People are like, oh, I hate the status quo, so I'm gonna be so different by dyeing my hair a strange color and wearing these socks really high and ordering a really unique coffee order and then just deciding to take ketamine instead of alcohol on Saturday nights, and I'm just gonna have sex with people who are the same, anyone. I'll have sex with my mom's best friend or just really odd connections just to try and be different. I mean, because then they're all doing the same thing. They all got the socks up high, ordering strange coffees, taking ketamine. They're all doing that to be different. And I remember when I was in high school, I was never an emo, but because I hated the emo. I mean, I hated the fact they're all the same. They're all trying to. Okay, yes, there's problems with modern Western world, but to all dye your hair black, wear the black jeans, put the chain, the couple of piercings, to put the water bottle in your back pocket, to wear Pikachu backpacks, to only hang out with people that dress the same as you. That's just an ant mentality to me. You don't just want to. I mean, it's so ironic to do the exact same thing as everyone else in the attempt to be different. I mean, because now it's so fashionable to be different that to be conservative, to have values of family and hard work and your health, that is now the alternative. That's why I'm getting into that. I'm really proud about the fact that I've got a fiance, that we want to have children, and I'm trying to work on my health, and I'm not trying to make my fashion my life. I'm not trying to show I'm special by these little easy ways. I want my achievements. I want my my character to speak for me, not my personal identity. Not those little trivial factors. your genitalia and your sex life is a very small part of your entire life. I mean, you sleep for 8 hours a day, right? A third of your life, minimum. I mean, a lot of people I know sleep 10, 12 hours a day. If you're sleeping 1/3 of your life, wouldn't that make sense to extremely research how to get the best sleep? What factors are involved? Because, I mean, most people I know, they have sex like 15 minutes a day, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, once or twice. So if you're so focused on your sex life and your sexuality and your gender, it doesn't seem rational to me, because it doesn't take up that much of your life. You know, I was joking just before about sleep being, you know, you should imagine though, if people spend as much time worrying about their sleep than they did their sex life. Because if you had a really good sleep, you wake up, like, you can be much less negative. You can offer more to the world. You'd look better. You'd live longer. You'd have to take less medication. Oh, but that's bad. You're stepping on the toes of someone's profit. But there's some things, okay, back to my point of differences in culture. I think there's some good things about Australia. Like, I think we're the most famous in the world for being, or obviously, no, Americans are more friendly to strangers. Like Katya, she spent 6 months living in the US before she came to Australia, and she's like, Americans are super easygoing to strangers. They'll be like, hey, what's up, man? Like, it's nice to see you at my party. Like, where are you from? Awesome, dude. Like, far out. They're extremely kind. Australians are more like, who's this cunt? And then once they get to know you, then they'll be like, oh, what's going on, brother? How you been, mate? It's like a long time no see. Fucking how you been? But you have to suss you out first. But yeah, Australians have been famous for being very trusting. Like Katya's family, like auntie and uncle, they went to Russia on like a tour a couple of years ago, and the tour advisor had to warn the guests, the travellers, not to, like, I mean, look, Australians are famous for being too trusting. They go, you know, getting conned by people. Like in Vietnam, it's very famous that they go for Australians to try and, like, prostitutes will try and lure a man in for the transaction of finance for female anatomy, like exchange. And then they would say, look, she's 17 and so you give me all your money, or otherwise you'll go to jail and rot for 10 years. And so basically, I mean, you can't be too trusting, because I think in Australia, like, besides the junkies and stuff like that, it's pretty safe. Like, I mean, well, obviously, actually, the least safe place I've ever felt in the world is in Perth, Western Australia, on a Saturday night. I mean, people just love to hit people for no reason. That's a lot to do with ice, though, because that gets rid of your empathy. But, like, I mean, in Brisbane, where I'm living now, it seems to be less of a meth problem, and people here, like, they're kind as. Like, also, I don't go out anymore. But, yeah, I feel like, you know, it's pretty much a safe place in Australia. Like, you know, and so it makes you too trusting. Whereas I know in Europe, there's so many poor countries nearby. Poverty is what drives malicious activity. Because if you've got no food on the table, you're willing to lie, cheat, steal in order to survive. I mean, survival instinct is above all else. And so you'd be willing to say, like, you know, sell someone a souvenir and then it's actually going to disintegrate and turn into dust in a few seconds. I mean, that's an extreme example, but you know what I mean. What's another thing you get conned by? I mean, even little things like a taxi. I'm sure, you know, I had a friend, Sam, he went to Bali and he was so drunk, he gave a $100 bill instead of like a 10,000 rupiah note. It's supposed to be like $10, so, you know, but the cab driver didn't let him know, because Australians are too trusting. But also, Australians have got an issue of binge drinking too much, and they invite, you're inviting negativity into your life if you let your guard down. That's why I think it's terrible for a grown man or woman to get roaring drunk. Like, I remember seeing family or family of my partner at a party, just getting so drunk. He was like dancing with other girls, like, what's going on? And it just looks really gross. Like, it's inhumane. I mean, and, it sounds like a bit wooey, but when you're in that state of mind, when you're completely intoxicated, demonic spirits can come into your body. I don't mean like physically, but they can take over. You're not clear. And your senses are down. Your motor skills are impaired. So you're going to make poor decisions, like give the wrong note. And it's not just because of the culture, it's obviously because of the money. I mean, I'm sure in Ukraine, they would get just as drunk as Australians do if they had the money. I mean, see, there's a stereotype right there that's incorrect. People assume that Russian-speaking people are just all vodka hounds. But that's not true. Not in modern times. They're very ambitious. They're very focused on education. Like Katya was saying on New Year's Eve, I mean, she was like 18 in Ukraine, like her and her 6 friends had like 1 bottle of champagne for 6 of them. They have 1 glass at midnight. Whereas, 18-year-old, the average girl in Australia would have 3 bottles of champagne for herself. And then a couple of pingers and a pack of darts and 2 kebabs. But I think it comes to analyse why Australians go so hard. I think it's because it's a test of masculinity, a test of character. The idea of going super hard, getting super intoxicated, it gives you like a journey. I actually had a conversation with a troubled young man once who came from, his mother died young and his dad was a alcoholic stoner and not ambitious, and he was saying he would abuse ice, he would inject crystal meth into his veins because he enjoyed trying to calm his anxieties down. So when you get hopped up on crystal meth, you're like, fuck man, I want to do something, eh? You're so scared, like you're so uncomfortable, you'd have to try and ease that pain. I mean, obviously there's endorphin release from the chemical, but it's just not how you're supposed to be. Like that much energy at once, it's really frustrating. You're sitting still. It's just like having a huge meal and then just doing nothing next day. If you have a lot of fuel, you're supposed to have an output. Like putting a NOS tank on a car and keeping it in neutral, like and accelerate. Like it's just make a car uncomfortable. But yeah, some people who abuse drugs and alcohol, they like the idea of the challenge, they like the idea of curing a hangover, the idea of letting someone else drive the wheel. Because when you're intoxicated, that drug is taken over. It's like, imagine you can saw open your brain, like with a chisel, whatever it is, like a really sharp blade. You cut the skull open, and you open it up, and there's the brain there, and you've just inserted the wine bottle or the crystal meth into that brain, and that is driving the machine. You're just there. You're a passenger. You're in the passenger seat, and then the drug is driving the wheel. So if you're not that confident in yourself, what you're doing is you're letting someone else take over. That comes down to low self-esteem. That comes down to lack of achievement. That comes down to not being proud of yourself for your achievements. Also, the cultural impact. Also, it comes down to business. Like an alcohol business, it's a for-profit business. So they want people to drink to excessive lengths every day until they die. I mean, obviously, they don't want to see the whole world just drunk driving, just killing each other every day. But obviously, businesses want to make profit because ethics isn't really a big deal anymore. So these advertising companies, like at sports, you see at a football match in Australia, like beer and whiskey will advertise there. And so just being a small girl, a small boy there, you're constantly having these flashing images into your mind. And so it's normalizing behavior. It just makes it appear that this substance is so much a part of the culture. And going to nightclubs is like the only way you can meet someone of the opposite sex. Well, that was before Tinder. And so people would go there, and I know people would get so drunk or take drugs because it gives them confidence to talk to the opposite sex, because it's very hard. Unless you're naturally gifted, or you're the most handsome person on earth or something. And so, but the thing is, like I was saying the other day, if you just try to abstain from chasing loose pleasure at that age and knuckle down, you'd be 5,000 times more attractive to potential mates in the future if you had something under your belt, some kind of achievement. But the ironic thing is, I want it all, and I want it now. So people, they go clubbing every weekend in their late teens, early 20s, and they get burnt out. So by the time they're 25, 30, they've got cognitive impairment from the abuse of the narcotics and alcohol. Or they just fall over, hit their head, or they get punched in the head a few many times from randoms. Like, it happens. I mean, I've been punched in the head a lot, as you can tell by the way I speak. Yeah, like you go to nightclubs in Australia and people will just say, "Oi, look at my Mexican, fucking," and enter your temple. So that's got to hurt. But obviously there's good times there. Like, some people just go dancing and have a great time. Like my sister, she seemed to have a lot of fun going clubbing. But she's like an angel. She's just like, also because she had her self-esteem boost. Like, she was proud of herself because she was working hard and she had good connection with her friends and family, and she didn't feel the need to go so hard. I mean, obviously she did drink a bit too much, and I wasn't happy about that, but she had control over it. I don't think she spewed up that much or, did anything silly like crashing cars or anything like that. And obviously there is a lot of people in the countryside in Ukraine who do drink too much vodka, but that comes down to communism too. They had communism there for so long, they had no hope. Like, some people are warriors. They need to feel like they can nearly die on the road to greatness. But if everyone's 100% equal, what the hell's the point? Like, why even bother being the best person you can be if you try your hardest in life, whereas Jeffrey next door is running 2 out of 8 cylinders, you're running on 8. End of the day, you're bringing home the same amount of bacon. And all the profits are going to the guy at the top who has like 10 houses and 500 mistresses. Why are you just paying for the guy at the top to buy diamond necklaces for all his mistresses? Like, why would you burn yourself out, break your back, and perhaps die on the road to greatness just to make one person at the top rich? I mean, it's funny because I went to the Socialist Society at university, and they're all middle class. They're all people who hate poor people. Like, the people who run the Socialist Society at universities, they come from middle class families. And do you think they really like labourers? Do you think they really like low-level administration clerks and homeless people? They despise them. But they hate rich people too. Like, they hate people who are really ambitious, people who are like dedicating their lives to entrepreneurial endeavours. Because, I mean, if you're born middle class, it's very easy to be like, what's the point? I thought that too. I went to that Socialist Society because I was thinking that maybe the world would be better if everyone was equal. But that's just, I was brainwashed, because it would be easier. Because when you see people like that guy I was talking about who's willing to study all night, the one who messaged me saying he liked my podcasts, which meant a lot, by the way, because he's someone I really respect. He's incredibly intelligent, disciplined. And if he watched my podcasts, that's fantastic, because I just can't believe that such a great man is interested in what I have to say. I mean, I am confident in some areas, but I do have a bit of low self-esteem in some areas too, because obviously, like, I'm not that successful financially, and I spent a couple of years in lockdown in Melbourne, and that wasn't very healthy. And being homeschooled in South Korea, I missed out socialization, and so I never really fully recovered from that. Never really fully recovered. It was pretty hard because I just spent most of my time at home, and I was used to socialization because from the age of 0 to 11, I went to a regular school in Perth, in Bateman, and I had lots of friends, and I was vice captain of the school, and I was obsessed with athletics and soccer, and English was my favorite subject in society environment, so I was very culturally interested, and I really loved reading. Like, I used to read Goosebumps, and I remember in like year 2 or 3, I was reading the book on break, and I was going into class, and I tripped up on the entrance because I had my nose in a book. So I may look like a jock, I may look like an idiot, but I do like reading. Differences in culture between Ukraine and Australia. Food, oh my God. We underestimate the power of food on our mind. I mean, you know how we have like a second brain in our stomachs, right? The main diet is incredibly healthy in Ukraine. One thing I want to say, there's a huge agenda against fat. So sunflower oil, avocados, lamb fat, that's not too bad. It's fuel. I know like 10, 20 years ago or something, in the Western world, they try to say everyone's obsessed with low fat. Like, you buy a Master's Mocha from the service station 10 years ago, the reduced fat one, it has almost twice the amount of sugar as the full cream. Can you believe that? And the thing is, sugar is from the devil, okay? I mean, if you abuse it, especially like the really high processed white sugar, everything white is from the devil. But it's insane because the food pyramid, it's absolute bullshit. If you look at the food pyramid, it says you got to have a lot of bread. That's fucked up, man. Like, you don't need to have that. And most of the bread you buy now, it's got so much extra gluten in it to help it stick, and because the wheat itself has changed. The wheat germ itself has modified because a plant, it tries to save itself from it wants to survive. And when it's constantly harvested and cut so much, it's changed over time because it's been over-harvested. And obviously the farmers, they want to make profits, fair enough. But in that process, they have isolated the certain grains that yield the highest crop. But it's some of the wheat germ, it's hard to digest. And they're willing to cut the entire part, like really down to the roots, so you're getting the wheat that has the highest amount of gluten in it, and it's hard to digest. And obviously, they used chemicals left over in World War II, like Roundup, in order to prevent the insects from getting into the wheat crops. And so that's why gluten intolerance has really shot off since the 80s, because that's when they started using these chemicals to grow the wheat. And so there's a real problem with most bread. And it's so much part of our culture. Like, I had this personal trainer friend who was working at this cocktail catering for corporate functions. It was a really good job because there's such interesting people you work with, and you put yourself on the spot. It's problem solving. But the point is, he was like a really strict personal trainer, like from England, and it's London. He was like pretty successful. He was jacked, and he was saying, when he does food guides for people, also he was saying that in Australia, it's crazy how most personal trainers, they don't do a food guide for you. Whereas in London, like, they're really strict on doing a guide for your diet too, because obviously 3/4 of your body is not to do with exercise, it's diet. And he limited grains or carbohydrates to 50% of your diet. And I was like, 50%? He's like, well, think about it. People do smash the carbs, like potatoes, rice, bread, pasta, all that stuff. And it's detrimental to abuse that because it gets addicted to it. Like, if you have a lot of bread, particularly white bread, white stuff from the devil, your stomach gets so used to it, you get extra fatigue, you get this huge insulin spike because of the high sugar count and because the molecular makeup of the bread, that if you don't have it regularly, you get extra fatigue, so you get extra cranky. So your body becomes addicted to that. Whereas if you have like a lot more protein and fats, it's longer lasting, it has a lower glycemic index, and it's not going to give you a huge spike, it's a more sustainable. You know that word, sustainable? And that comes down to identity politics of like a veganism and vegetarianism, where they're notorious for abusing carbohydrates, which may explain why a lot of vegans and vegetarians are cranky. I was, for a decade, strict vegetarian and basically vegan, except for eggs. And I was always fatigued. Like now I'm 31, I feel stronger. I feel more calm. I feel more optimistic and ambitious now than I did at 24 because I now eat meat. And I think that's what we're supposed to do. And I think that some people, that obviously they have the best intentions, good on them. I mean, they're obviously pure souls. They become vegan or vegetarian because they want to be a good person and not harm the animals. But if you're not feeling 100%, then how are you going to give back to the world? Like imagine, if your energy levels is at 100% instead of 60, you can go out there and educate farmers or start your own business about the benefit of small batch farming instead of huge factory farming. Because think about like a cow. If you go to on the border of New South Wales and Queensland, near Gold Coast, in Currumbin, you can see these cows, these fat, beautiful brown cows that spend 8 to 10 years with their best friends just eating beautiful, pure, luscious green grass in the meadows overlooking a lake. There's birds chirping above them. They've got little rainbows in the sky. They're chatting to their best mates all day. They've got a nice little shade spot. They have no traffic. They're not dealing with identity politics. They're not dealing with corrupt government. They're not dealing with overzealous, tyrannical leaders who are on medication with no empathy, who are controlling you just to get their kicks because they were bullied in school. No. And so these cows, they're eating just pure grass, they're hanging out with their mates, and then one day they're walking along like, and then one day like, what's going on over here? Shot to the head, wherever they do it, and it's very quick. I was thinking about most humans. We're hunched over in these little offices, and we're like selling insurance, and we're like, and we're drinking all this coffee to try and get inspired. Like, come on, give me strength. Dear Lord, give me strength. Sell this insurance. And then you drive home and your car's too small and it's making bad noises, and you get home and your partner yells at you and your dog's shit on the couch, and you put on the TV and it's just telling you are evil. White people are evil. And you're like, fuck, I just wanted to go to work and come home and have some salad. And they're not dealing with any of that. So, I mean, think about human beings' life. We go to school and our soul is squashed, and, we're eating this crap, we're eating like this crappy Vegemite sandwiches and bags of chips because our parents don't know anything better. And our parents are so tired to talk to us. We get home and we're watching Ally McBeal, and it's like, fuck, this entertainment is just killing my soul. I just want to talk to you. Come here, play Scrabble. Come here, have a human engagement. No, you're watching Ally McBeal and you watch those commercials, right? You sit through it and just watch Ally McBeal. And so there's a lot of shit we go through as human beings, whereas, fuck, I want to be a cow. I want to grow up in Currumbin and to spend 10 years eating grass with my best friends, and then one day get shot. And so just think about that. They live better than us. Like, a lot of human beings live terrible lives. In Dubai, Indians come over to try and make money for their family. They take their passport. They work in 55-degree heat. They live in huts of like 20 people. They get treated like like vermin. Like I know a lot of people don't even eat Indian food in Dubai because they're so racist against them. Like the Arabics, they are so racist against Indians, they won't even eat Indian food as it's seen as dirty, right? They live their hard lives, right? These Indians, like I get along with them really well. Like they got a good sense of humor, like, you know, like they're hardworking, like they're good people, right? I fucking love Indians. But like they haven't got the same moral compass. I mean, obviously I'm generalizing here, but a lot of humans live terrible lives. And so if you look at it in a worldly perspective, to eat a piece of meat that the animals lived a full life, they would have had a chance of life if it wasn't for the business purpose of providing sustenance for human beings. So, obviously, like I say it again, these people have the best intentions, these vegans, they have the best intentions. They want to save a life. But the life would never have been there if it wasn't for the purpose. So, what would they really want? If everyone stopped eating meat overnight, the farmers would no longer raise the cows. The grass fields would be converted to condos for international students to come in to sit there on their iPads and study business and go back to their own country after, and then use the Australian education to stimulate their economy in another country, right? So you have to think about that in a global perspective. And also, why are you focusing on the cows when so many human lives are terrible? I mean, particularly since the tyrannical restrictions of the pandemic, youth mental health is down in the dumps. I hear about self-harm from children like as young as like 3 or 4 years old. I mean, that didn't used to exist. I mean, of course, you may say, well, someone has to think about the cows, but think about this. If you worked on the human beings first, you got more people on your team. Like if human beings are doing better, we could work together to find out a way to give a better quality of life to the cows and the chickens and the ducks and the squirrels. And South Park made a good point about this, like the Save the Whale people, like, save the whales. And they go out to people and it's like stabbing the people, like, save the whales, man. It's like, yeah, I like whales, but I mean, human beings are pretty special. Like, I don't know, I just feel like human beings have a lot to offer. And we undervalue human life. Human life is great. And if we are doing well, if our mental health is strong, if our physical health is strong, we can give back to the world. If we had community engagement, if we were talking to our grandmothers, if we were talking to the hipsters and we all got together, then we could share our wisdom and polish this world. I mean, it's very fashionable to want to tear down all the institutions of this earth, tear down all we've built and start afresh. But hold on. Some of our ways of life have taken hundreds of thousands of years to develop. And Karl Marx, he wants to put the power into the hands of the working class, but who gets to decide who is a leader? There still has to be a leader. And you get corrupt. Anyone gets that much power, you get corrupt. The maximum amount of people one should lead is 2,000-3,000 people. That's what we're meant to live in. And so it's very hard for people not to get corrupt. And it's just a natural byproduct in any kingdom that there will be some people who get more resources than others. But it's a trick to think not everyone needs to have all these resources. So some people who are working in like factory jobs or working at 7-Eleven, or they're just working, making coffees, they may be pissed off at the economic system because they see people born into wealth, just driving Maseratis and doing coke all day. But I mean, who's to say that life is better? I mean, who's to say a barista can't go home, read Dostoevsky, take his beautiful dog for a walk, make a lovely seafood paella with his mum and his his girlfriend, and then they get together and they play guitar, and then they have a nice game of Uno together. Maybe they share a spliff, something like that. That you can do that on a working class salary. And what's his name said? Biggie Smalls, more money, more problems. Like when you're rich as fuck, you have to worry about everyone just trying to fake their like for you in order to get your resources. They're waiting for you one day to trip up or get drunk, and then they'll ask you for a favor and, just weasel out some resources from you. So whereas if you're broke as, people only want you for your company. So I'm not trying to encourage mediocrity, but I'm just trying to say, obviously, these days, people are comparing themselves to Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, not to their neighbor. 50 years ago, people would compare themselves to their neighbor. And so they've only got an older car. They're not too upset because it's like, well, the neighbor has a brand new Corvette, but I've only got like a Mitsubishi Magna. But I mean, it's not too much of a difference. Whereas now, we're sitting at home on TikTok and we're comparing ourselves to these people with 15 cars and, just throwing cash everywhere. So you're always going to feel inferior. The grass is always green on the other side. It reminds me of some issues of my mother's life. Her mother and father always went from England to Australia all the time, trying to seek a better life. And every time you move country, you're spending $5,000 at least. So it would have kept you back, and then you got to get involved in the school again. And so you got to be careful not to fall trap to the grass is always greener somewhere else. Sometimes you just need to do the best with the situation you have and not compare yourself to others, because it's very easy to look at someone on social media and think that their lives are much better than yours. But I mean, it's people who usually have the most manicured social media pages are usually the ones who are miserable, because they are so OCD about appearing successful online because they feel guilty about all the areas they're lacking in their personal life. So my next point was Neil Young, Joe Rogan, PR. So, as everyone knows, Neil Young has threatened to take his music that he doesn't own off Spotify because he is upset with Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan had doctors on who talk about COVID, and Neil Young is very pro-vaccine, very pro-COVID restrictions. Like, some people, he said he had a polio and he got sick off that. But also, some people really enjoy these restrictions because it kept poor people out of things. Like, until 2019, I remember meeting backpackers who they work in Australia for like 3 months and they spend 6 months traveling Southeast Asia. They're going around to hostels and parties and living like kings. Like a backpacker in 2019 lived better than a king from 200 years ago, right? So I bet you a lot of rich people, particularly aging people who best years are behind them, they're like, look at these young people living such free lives. That pisses me off. They're broke as, but they're still having such a good adventures. So now there's so much restrictions. You have to bribe politicians, or you have to be really upper middle class in order to enjoy life now with all the strict restrictions. So it's definitely better for super rich people. Obviously, like really lower class people, like on the dole, they don't mind the powerful restrictions too, because they get an extra $200 a week or whatever from the handouts, so they can just do more drugs at home and masturbate and all that terrible stuff. But also, what the main point is that marketing, public relations, right? Sigmund Freud's nephew came to Australia. He invented public relations. So everything is business. And think about marketing strategy. Neil Young has been in the papers now more than he has in 40 years. Like, he hasn't produced a good album since 1995. So, like Winona Ryder, she was a millionaire, but she tried to cut clothes in a Gucci store in LA, like a fancy clothes store, tried to steal them. But like Frank Sinatra said, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So any news is good news. If you get in the AOL, in the Yahoo search engine, in the Bing search engine, if you get famous or in the papers again for stealing clothes or for yelling at another celebrity, they're still talking about you. And it's nice we talked about, because celebrities, it's very addictive. Like, they want to be top of the tits all the time, famous as fuck. So obviously they're going to be upset if they are not getting talked about. And obviously it's a hot topic because it's the biggest thing in the world. Like, everyone's addicted to the coronavirus restrictions because it's, it's just so juicy. And so maybe, hypothetically speaking, some young coked up marketing guru could have said, hey, Mr. Young, I know a way to make your music go through the roof in popularity again. Yeah? How's that? And maple flavored? So what I can do is I can say, look, say you're really pissed off at Joe and then you're getting talked about again. Oh, fuck yeah. That's just what I wanted to say, is that beware of marketing, okay? Because most people work in marketing, they will do anything. They will sell their own mother for $50, okay? Trust me, like, I'm a marketing person. I mean, not through and through, but I've got the potential. My last point was truckers protest. So the truckers protest, for some strange reason, these gentlemen and ladies in Canada, they're upset about getting these simple injections in order to keep the government happy. All they have to do is every 3 months, the rest of their life, is get this injection and show all their paperwork to the authorities, and then they're allowed to work. And that makes total sense, because if you're not vaccinated, you can kill people. Whereas when you're vaccinated, you can't kill people. I mean, it makes total sense, because when you're vaccinated, it's much less chance of reducing transmission. If someone could find that out, I was trying to research this yesterday, but I'm assuming it's about 90% more effective. I'm assuming if you've had 3 Pfizer injections, you are 90% less chance of reducing your chance of transmitting COVID-19 to another person. Whereas if you are walking around, singing George Michael, like, jitterbug in your heart, and you haven't had any of these injections, you're probably 9 times more likely asymptomatically to spread it. That's just my hypothesis. And so it's very, I don't know why they don't just take the jab and shut the fuck up. How hard is it? But in their defense, give them an inch, take a mile. Maybe that's their thinking. Maybe they're thinking, what's next? Or maybe the transmission rate of asymptomatic COVID carriers could not be 90% effective. Maybe it's only, 50%, 30%? I'm not sure. To be honest, I wish those information was more readily available. But I just think we are very emotional right now because our needs haven't been met. We haven't visited our relatives, and everyone's just thinking, look, if I just do what I'm told, things will go back to normal. And I think a lot of us have PTSD, and we're looking for someone to blame. Just like the Germans wanted to blame the Jews for their ineptness. Some people they're looking for an enemy, right? And I understand where they're coming from. But I really feel like we need to think about the world in 50 years' time. How will they view the situation? Please. Don't put yourself in this. You have to take away your personal ego from the analysis. There's a reason why clinical psychologists are not allowed to counsel their own family. There's a reason why detectives in the police force are not allowed to work on cases with their own family. It's because when you have your personal emotions involved in your work, it skews your professionalism. And everyone's emotions are tied to the situation. So it's very hard for anybody to offer an objective, non-biased analysis on this. Well, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, or I hope they have a terrible day, because those terrible days are the times you learn the most. If you're living your whole life with sunshine, lollipops and rainbows everywhere, you become boring as tits. Okay? Everyone knows that person who's had an easy life. They never worked hard, they never studied hard, they never took any chances, and you know what they sound like at parties? Hello, I brush my hair in the evenings. That's what they sound like. So don't just wish people a good day. Wish them sickness. Wish them poverty. Wish them hailstorms, because that's the only time you grow.